The rain pounded against the diner's fogged windows like a relentless accusation, each drop echoing the regrets that had haunted Elias for decades. He shuffled through the door, his frail frame bent under the weight of 85 years and a lifetime of unspoken words, his eyes locking onto the young cook behind the counter with a desperation that silenced the room. "Please," Elias whispered, his voice cracking like old leather. "Make me the sandwich my brother loved, the one with rye bread, corned beef piled high, Swiss cheese melting just so, and that tangy mustard he could never get enough of. It's been 50 years since I last tasted it, since I last saw him alive." The cook, a burly man named Marco with tattoos snaking up his arms, paused mid-flip of a burger patty, his spatula hovering in the air. The diner was nearly empty at this late hour, just a couple of truckers nursing coffees in the corner booths and the hum of the neon sign flickering open outside. Marco wiped his hands on his apron, studying the old man's trembling hands and the way his gaze seemed fixed on some distant memory. "Sure, Pops," he said gently, though curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Coming right up. Mind if I ask why now? After all these years?" Elias eased onto a stool, the vinyl creaking under him, and let out a sigh that carried the scent of mothballs and faded cologne. He hadn't planned on spilling his soul tonight. He'd come to this rundown spot on the edge of town because it was the only place left that reminded him of the old days, when he and his brother Jonah would sneak out after curfew for late-night bites. Jonah, with his infectious laugh and dreams bigger than the Montana skies they grew up under, always the adventurous one, dragging Elias into scrapes that somehow turned into the best stories. But that was before the war, before the draft notice that tore them apart like a rift in the earth. As Marco assembled the sandwich with practiced hand-slathering the mustard, layering the cheese just right, Elias's mind drifted back to 1942. They were barely out of their teens, working the family farm in rural Idaho, when the letter arrived. Jonah, the elder by 2 years, had volunteered first, his chest puffed with patriotic fervor. "I'll be back before you know it, Eli," he'd promised, clapping Elias on the shoulder. "And when I am, we'll hit that diner in Boise and order a mountain of those sandwiches." Elias had nodded, hiding his fear, but inside he seethed with envy and worry. Envy because Jonah was always the brave one. Worry because the newsreels showed boys like them coming home in boxes. The war swallowed Jonah whole. Letters came sporadically at first, filled with tales of boot camp hijinks and the exotic foods in Europe that paled compared to their mama's cooking. Then they slowed, each one shorter, heavier with the unspoken horrors of the front lines. Elias stayed behind, deferred for a bum knee from a childhood accident, tending the farm alone as their parents aged and the world spun into chaos. He wrote back faithfully, pouring out his heart about the harvests, the neighbors' gossip, anything to keep Jonah tethered to home. But one day, the letters stopped. A telegram arrived instead, missing in action, presumed dead. Marco slid the plate across the counter, the sandwich steaming invitingly, its aroma a ghost from the past. Elias stared at it, tears welling unbidden. "He never came back," he murmured, more to himself than to Marco. "They said he went down in some battle near the Rhine, but no body, no closure. Just gone." He picked up the sandwich with shaking hands, taking a tentative bite. The flavors exploded: salty beef, sharp mustard, the nutty rye, just as he remembered. It was like Jonah was there, elbowing him playfully, saying, "See? Told you it'd be worth the wait." But the bite stuck in his throat, choked by the flood of memories. Elias set it down, wiping his mouth. "We fought before he left, you know. Stupid brother stuff. He accused me of being a coward for not enlisting, and I threw back that he was reckless, always leaving me to clean up his messes. Last words we exchanged were in anger." Marco leaned on the counter, his tough exterior softening. "Families like that, Pops. But blood's thicker than any fight. Bet he knew you loved him." Elias nodded slowly, but doubt gnawed at him. For years, he'd buried the guilt under layers of routine: marrying young, raising kids who now had kids of their own, retiring to a quiet life in a suburb that felt worlds away from the farm. Yet Jonah lingered, a shadow in every family photo, a question mark in Elias's dreams. Why had he survived while Jonah hadn't? Was it fate, or just dumb luck? The sandwich sat half-eaten as Elias recounted more the way Jonah taught him to fish in the creek behind their house, how they'd share secrets under the stars, plotting escapes to the big city. Marco listened, flipping the closed sign without a word, letting the truckers finish up. He poured Elias a fresh coffee, black and strong, and shared a story of his own. Losing a buddy in Afghanistan, the kind of loss that leaves holes you can't fill. You honor them by remembering, Marco said. By eating that damn sandwich like it's the last meal on earth. Elias managed a weak smile, the warmth of the diner seeping into his bones. But as he took another bite, a woman entered through the back door. Marco's wife, perhaps, or a late-shift waitress. She froze, her eyes widening at Elias. "Dad?" she whispered, but no, that couldn't be. Elias blinked, confusion etching his face. She approached slowly, her apron matching Marco's. "You look just like." "Never mind. What brings you in so late, sir?" The conversation shifted, lightening with small talk about the weather and the diner's history. But Elias couldn't shake the familiarity in her eyes. As the night wore on, he opened up more, the sandwich fueling confessions he'd held for decades. Jonah's favorite jokes, his unrealized dream of opening a garage for fixing old cars. Elias felt lighter, as if sharing eased the burden. Yet deep down, a twist simmered. Unbeknownst to him, Marco had his own secrets. The cook glanced at the old photo tucked in his wallet, a faded snapshot of a soldier, strikingly similar to Elias. But for now, the night held its breath. Elias finished the sandwich, every bite a bittersweet communion with the brother he'd lost. The flavors lingered on his tongue, transporting him back to sun-drenched afternoons on the farm, where Jonah would sneak extra mustard from the pantry, grinning like a fox in the henhouse. But as the plate emptied, so did the temporary solace. Reality crashed in with the clatter of a fork, reminding him that Jonah was still gone, and no meal could bridge that chasm. Marco cleared the plate, his movements deliberate, as if sensing the old man's unraveling. "You want another?" "On the house." Elias shook his head, but gratitude swelled in his chest. This stranger had given him more than food offered an ear, a rare gift in a world that moved too fast for reminiscences. The woman from earlier, introduced as Lena, Marco's sister and co-owner, busied herself wiping counters, stealing glances at Elias. Her resemblance to someone from his past nagged at him, but he pushed it aside, chalking it up to age playing tricks. As the clock ticked past midnight, Elias delved deeper into his tale. After the war, he'd searched for answers, writing to veterans groups, poring over declassified records in dusty libraries. Whispers of survivors in displaced persons camps fueled false hopes, each lead a dagger when it dead-ended. His wife, Clara, God rest her soul, had urged him to let go. "Jonah wouldn't want you chained to the past," she'd say, her hand on his. But Clara was gone now too, taken by cancer 5 years back, leaving Elias adrift in an empty house filled with echoes. Lena paused her cleaning, drawn in despite herself. "Sounds like my grandpa's stories," she said softly, leaning against the counter. "He fought in Europe, came back a changed man. Never talked much about it, but he'd make these sandwiches, rye, corned beef, the works, and stare off like he was feeding a ghost." Elias's heart skipped. "Your grandpa? What was his name?" "Jonathan Hale," she replied, and the world tilted. Elias gripped the counter, his knuckles white. Jonathan Jonah's full name, though he hated it, preferring the nickname. Hale was their mother's maiden name. Jonah had joked about using it if he ever went undercover. "Can't be," Elias muttered, but Lena pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo, an old man, weathered but with the same sharp jawline, the mischievous glint in his eyes that Elias knew all too well. The twist hit like a thunderclap. Jonah had indeed survived, captured, presumed dead in the fog of war. Amnesia from a head wound, identity lost in the chaos of liberation camps. He'd rebuilt a life under a new name, marrying, having kids, Marco and Lena's mother among them, never knowing his real past until fragments returned too late. Elias's searches had missed him by miles, fates diverging like rivers. Tears streamed down Elias's face as Lena recounted family lore. Grandpa Jonathan's unexplained longing for Idaho farms, his ritual of making that specific sandwich on rainy nights, murmuring about a brother left behind. "He passed last year," she said, her voice thick. "Always said he had unfinished business, but we thought it was the war talking." Marco, piecing it together, fetched a box from the back Jonah's belongings, including a yellowed letter addressed to Elias, never sent. Found this in his things. Figured it was delirium. Elias unfolded it with reverence, the handwriting unmistakable. Eli, if you're reading this, I made it, but not whole. Forgive me for not coming home sooner. The sandwich waits. The diner blurred through Elias's sobs, a mix of grief and joy crashing over him. Jonah had lived a full life, albeit shadowed by loss. The brothers had paralleled each other unknowingly, both haunted by the rift of that final argument. Elias clutched the letter, feeling the weight lift slightly. Lena hugged him tentatively, a surrogate for the family connection snapping into place. You're our great uncle, she whispered. Welcome home. But the revelation opened old wounds. Elias spent the next hours sharing stories, laughter mingling with tears. Jonah's adventures post-war, working as a mechanic, just like his dream, raising a family that mirrored their own childhood antics. Marco shared how Grandpa taught him to cook, insisting on that sandwich recipe as if it were sacred. The twist reshaped Elias's world. His brother hadn't abandoned him. Fate had stolen their reunion. As dawn crept in, Elias felt reborn. The personnel auxiliary twist of Lena and Marco being kin added layers of emotion, emphasizing how lives intertwine unexpectedly. Yet questions lingered. Why hadn't Jonah reached out sooner? Fear of rejection? The guilt mirrored Elias's own. They exchanged numbers, promising visits. Elias left the diner with a full heart, the rain now a cleansing rinse. But the story wasn't over. Healing had just begun. Elias drove home through the lifting storm, the letter on the passenger seat like a talisman against the loneliness that had defined him. The city lights blurred into streaks, mirroring the whirlwind in his mind. Jonah, alive all those years, building a legacy Elias had unknowingly mourned. Arriving at his modest bungalow, he clutched the paper, reading it again under the porch light. Words of regret, love, and a plea for forgiveness that echoed his own unspoken prayers. Inside, the house felt less empty. He brewed coffee, strong like Marco's, and sat at the kitchen table, piecing together the fragments. Jonah's new life, settling in California after the war, marrying a nurse who'd cared for him in recovery. Their children, then grandchildren, Marco with his diner dreams, Lena with her sharp wit that reminded Elias of their mother. The sandwich, a subconscious thread connecting them across the miles. But joy warred with anger. Why the silence? Elias rummaged through his attic, dust motes dancing in the flashlight beam, unearthing old letters and photos. One snapshot showed them as boys, arms slung around each other, grins wide. We were unbreakable, he whispered. Sleep eluded him. Instead, he planned a trip to Jonah's grave, to finally say goodbye and hello to the family he'd gained. The next day, Elias met Marco and Lena at the diner for breakfast. The place buzzed with mourning patrons, but they claimed a corner booth, spreading out photos and mementos. Lena brought Jonah's journal, pages filled with cryptic entries, dreams of a farm, a brother's face haunting him. The amnesia faded slowly, she explained. By the time memories returned, he thought you'd moved on, maybe even passed. He didn't want to disrupt your life. Elias nodded, understanding the fear. He'd done the same, burying pain rather than risking more hurt. As they talked, a customer overheard. An elderly veteran named Gus, nursing oatmeal nearby. Hail, you say? Knew a Jonathan in the camps. Tough as nails, but always talking about his kid brother back home. Gus's twist entry added depth. Jonah had saved his life during an escape attempt, taking a bullet that caused the head wound. He'd mumble your name in his sleep, Elias. Never forgot you. This auxiliary character shifted perspectives, highlighting Jonah's heroism and the war's lingering scars. Elias felt pride swell, replacing resentment. Gus shared war stories, the camaraderie forging instant bonds. Laughter erupted over Jonah's legendary pranks, like rigging the barracks with whoopee cushions scavenged from aid packages. The gathering extended into lunch, the sandwich making a return appearance now a family ritual. Elias savored it differently, each bite honoring not just loss, but resilience. Marco proposed renaming the special The Brothers Bond, a menu item to immortalize their story. Lena, teary-eyed, hugged Elias fiercely. Grandpa would love this. You're the piece he was missing. Emotions peaked as Elias visited Jonah's grave that afternoon, Marco and Lena by his side. The cemetery was serene, wildflowers dotting the grass. Kneeling, Elias placed a half sandwich on the stone, a silly gesture, but poignant. "I forgive you, brother," he said, voice steady. "And I hope you forgive me." Wind rustled the leaves, as if in reply. Back home, Elias called his own children, sharing the miracle. Their shock turned to excitement. Plans for a reunion bubbled. For the first time in years, his house filled with voices, phone calls, then visits. Grandkids marveled at the tales, drawing family trees that now branched wider. Yet the human value deepened. Forgiveness isn't just words, but actions reaching out, bridging gaps. Elias volunteered at a veterans center, helping others find lost kin, turning personal pain into communal healing. Marco and Lena became regulars in his life, holidays blending families in joyous chaos. One evening, as Elias watched the sunset from his porch, sandwich in hand, peace settled. The twist of fate had rewritten his ending, not with perfection, but with hope. Brothers separated by war, reunited through legacy. Life's kinks, he realized, often lead to the richest flavors. The months following blurred into a tapestry of rediscovery for Elias. Family gatherings became frequent, the diner serving as neutral ground where stories flowed like the endless coffee refills. Marco's kids, Elias's great-nieces and nephews clambered over him, demanding tales of great-great-uncle Jonah, their innocence a balm to old wounds. Lena organized a scrapbook, compiling photos and letters into a chronicle of two lives unknowingly intertwined. But healing wasn't linear. Nightmares resurfaced, Jonah's face in the trenches, Elias's guilt for staying safe. Therapy helped, recommended by Gus, who became a steadfast friend. The veteran shared his own twist, survivor's guilt, hidden medals, and together they attended support groups, emphasizing the human cost of war beyond battlefields. A pivotal moment came during a family trip to the old Idaho farm, now a historical site. Standing amid the overgrown fields, Elias felt Jonah's presence keenly. "This is where we dreamed," he told the group, voice thick. They picnicked with sandwiches, laughter echoing the brothers' youthful antics. Marco proposed a foundation, Brothers Bond Charity, aiding separated families. The idea ignited passion, channeling grief into purpose. Twists continued unfolding. A DNA test confirmed the lineage, but revealed another auxiliary, a half-sibling from Jonah's post-war wanderings, a woman named Rosa living in New York. Her entry added complexity. Abandoned unknowingly, she'd built a life of quiet strength. Contacting her brought tears and tentative bonds, expanding the family circle further. Rosa's stories of searching for roots mirrored Elias's, underscoring themes of identity and belonging. As winter approached, Elias faced health scaries, a mild heart episode, reminders of mortality. Hospital visits rallied the clan, their support a testament to newfound unity. Recovering, he wrote letters to each relative, echoing Jonah's unsent words, expressions of love, regrets mended. The climax built to a memorial event at the diner, renamed Jonah's Joint in tribute. Veterans, locals, and family packed the place, sharing toasts and sandwiches. Elias spoke, voice steady. "My brother taught me that love endures, even through silence and separation. We honor him by living fully, forgiving freely." Applause thundered, emotions raw. In quiet moments, Elias reflected on the journey from a desperate request in a diner to this web of connections. The initial hook of loss had evolved into a narrative of redemption, proving that one small act like ordering a sandwich can unravel destinies. Years later, Elias sat in the same stool, now surrounded by kin. The sandwich remained a staple, each bite a whisper of Jonah. Life's drama, with its twists and turns, had delivered profound humanity. In loss, we find. In forgiveness, we heal. The story of the brothers lived on, a beacon for others. Elias closed his eyes, content. The end wasn't an ending, but a continuation through those he loved.